Greetings. It is Thursday, May 7th, 2020, and the 14th of Ramadan, about halfway through this month of fasting for Muslims. I'm Mahan Mirza, Executive Director of the Ansari Institute for Global Engagement with Religion, and this is Engaged, Religion and the Common Good, an online series of conversations that we've initiated in the midst of the COVID-19 days of social distancing and self-isolation. We are delighted to have with us today Darrell Flash Gordon, CEO of Wernle Youth and Family Treatment Center in Richmond, Indiana. As a starting member of the 1988 National Championship team, Darrell is a genuine Irish legend. He excelled on and off the field, advancing to the Chase School of Law in Northern Kentucky after completing both bachelor's and master's degrees from Notre Dame. He also studied at Indiana University's School of Philanthropy and Harvard Business School. Darrell has been a transformational leader at Wernle since 2001. In 2016, he received the Sagamore of the Wabash Award, the highest honor in the state of Indiana. He is a motivational speaker and author of Change Does Not Occur in a Flash. Darrell will be joined in a few moments by two of his colleagues at Wernle, Pastor Clifford Nunn and Philanthropy Officer Faris Ghani. Darrell, it's a pleasure to have you with us.
Mahan, it is always a pleasure to be here with you and to be able to have this great dialogue.
Yeah.
I wish I was in South Bend, but I'm only a few hours away.
Yes, close, but too far for these days. We've met only once before, but I feel like we've known each other forever.
Amen. Amen on that.
Yeah. Well, how are things going at Wernle on your campus in the midst of this pandemic?
Yes, thank you for asking, Mahan. It's been unprecedented leadership, right? Because we're in a space that we've never been in before. There is no rule books. There are no precedent. There is nothing that I can pull, or many of our leaders can pull, as to how we navigate through these waters. But it's been an unbelievable journey. Our kids on our campus, about a 100-acre campus, and our kids have all been safe. None of them have been diagnosed with the COVID-19, which has been a blessing. Our staff all have been safe. Also, no diagnosis of COVID-19. So we've been really blessed, lucky, and fortunate that they continue to work together to try to get through the reasons of being on campus, which is the treatment, right? That is necessary, but we also got to navigate through the COVID process. So we've been putting in a lot of rules and regulations and new processes so that we can still be effective in changing the lives of our children, while also, taking into account making sure they stay safe from this virus.
Well, it's a real blessing that you all have been safe and there are no infections. Obviously, you're not like other campuses that can send their students home. One of the reasons they're there is because they can't be at home or in other places. So you have to manage it in a completely different way from the way other residential campuses have had to.
That is exactly so. Many other facilities, they can really close their doors and wait until this pandemic passes through. But in our case, kids are still being abused, neglected, or abandoned, and we still have to respond to that call that they're having. And I think we're doing an unbelievable job. At least our staff are doing an unbelievable job at making sure that transformation continues to exist.
Yeah, well, we'll get back to questions of faith in a moment, but I want to turn to some of the core themes of the book.
Yes.
The book dwells on the idea of change. And on the one hand, you say that change isn't easy for people or organizations. On the other hand, you point out that, and I quote, "Our campus is changing every day. Our residents are changing. I am changing." And so on the one hand, change is difficult. On the other hand, change is inevitable. And this is maybe one of the ways of saying that life isn't easy. So tell us a little bit about your thoughts on change as a kind of constant in the human condition.
You can't Mahan, you can't control, in my opinion, change, right? And probably the perfect example is COVID, right? We can't change what this pandemic has done to us. We now must react differently to the process of change. And depending on how we react to change is the result of our success or our failures, in my opinion. So I truly believe, in the book, it talks about 80% of the American people never change until they experience a severe degree of discomfort, right? So, and again, this is 2 years ago when the book was written, right? And it's confirming my point that we all as an American people don't want to congregate, spend time as a family, learn to interact and utilizing technology in a better way, telling people we love them and being conscientious of disease and infections. That today, through the result of the COVID and the discomfort that we're experiencing, we now have to change. And everybody is available and open to change. The 20% of the American people are changing every day. And that, in my opinion, is the real significant difference in change. Is 80% of us are waiting to something to happen for us to change. And then there's the other 20% who are making those prominent changes prematurely and early and making the great progress in their lives that they need to make. So is this part of the human? I think, you know, I talked to my son and I said, hey, finally, you are, and I tell my staff, finally, you guys are using Zoom. and here we are today, right? Right, Mahan? It's, I think we've moved the technological movement 3 years quicker in arriving to this place where we are today if we didn't have the pandemic. And those are the processes of change. And sometimes it has to be forced on us.
Yeah.
For us to make this
yeah. And come to think of it, you know, you and I may never have met if it weren't for this. So things open up, change presents opportunities.
Yes.
And in that sense, you know, forcing us all to confront this adversity and requiring us to, you know, shift what we used to consider to be our normal, because we all know that our societies badly need change. In that sense, something like COVID can be viewed as a blessing. And, you know, theologically, it's hard to view, on the one hand, you're always looking for blessings, but on the other hand, it's hard to call something a blessing when it's causing so much harm and suffering to so many people. And this is one of those, I guess, eternal mysteries. But sticking to this idea of change and adversity driving change, I wonder if you can tell us adversity has also driven major change in your life. So share a little bit about your personal story and how that forced change upon you.
You know, I really believe adversity is sort of the engine behind sacrifice and perseverance, right? Without adversity, you don't develop great character and you don't develop great leadership unless you've gone through adversity. And even in my own life, I can recall even during my high school days when Notre Dame walked in and I'm this all-American athlete, and it's my sophomore, junior year, and they walk in, talk to the guidance department, and they have great dialogue, but they never talk to me. And then eventually, after meeting with my guidance department and looking at my grades my sophomore years, they left. And, you know, and every day there were college coaches coming in from all over the country interested in me coming to their institution. But I remember talking to my coach and I said, hey, coach, who came today? He said, well, it was Florida State, Georgia, and Notre Dame. I said, I didn't see Notre Dame. I did see Florida State and Georgia. He said, well, they were here. They went to the guidance department, right? And I said, well, why were they there not talking to me? Well, they were interested in first understanding your character and understanding how you're performing academically. And I remember that I wasn't a stellar academic individual in my sophomore year in high school, and which is why they shared with the academic advisors that we don't think he's the right fit for our institution. Through that adversity, I worked extremely hard to accelerate through those challenges, which allowed me to finish in the top 20% of my class. become an All-American football player, and really get an offer from Coach Faust to go to the University of Notre Dame, but only as a result of the adversity and persevering through it, though, Mahan, right? So when we're in the midst of adversity, what do? Do we allow ourselves to crawl in a fetus position and not perform where we're supposed to be? Because 80% of us will stay right where we are. There's 20% that says, it's not acceptable for Notre Dame to walk out the door. I'm going to prove to them that I'm supposed to be in the door. And that same philosophy has happened when I was there in my senior year, and Lou Holtz said, hey, Flash, I don't think you need to stay a fifth year, right? That for a kid that was starting and playing and knew he was coming back, and the head coach tells you, I don't think we need you next year. And we're just going to go with our younger kids because we really need to start winning. And I was devastated. And you talk about adversity at that point. I put as much work into watching film and working out and being the strongest kid on the team pound for pound, because I was committing myself to that, and excelling academically in graduate school, that through all of that adversity and the work and perseverance, we win a national championship under my leadership. And we go to the White House and I get a graduate degree. But I think the point I'm trying to make is, when he made the statement, I had to respond. And it depends on how we respond in adversity, just as we are in COVID today. How do we respond to this environment and make sure that we continue to meet the expectations that were set out for us, because there will be obstacles in our way. And it's our responsibility to find a way to do that.
Yeah. So one of this is just so fascinating. One of the things is, adversity is going to come, how we respond. And there's another aspect to this, which you say in your book, fortune can play a critical role in your life. And two of the major turning points in your life were based on luck. When some would say at that time, bad luck. The first was an injury that benched you in your first year, but that benching made you eligible for a fifth year.
That's
and
right.
So you wouldn't even have been able to have had this conversation with Lou Holtz if you didn't have that fifth year option. And the second was, before the draft, you got injured again. And so that eliminated the NFL option. And so, but that opened up new doors and got you into, law school and brought you to Wernle. And so, and you also said in the book, my life's focus changed in the moment of that injury. And so the injury was in that way, fortuitous. So tell us more about this, idea of luck or fate and how that can shape one's destiny. And are we really in control?
Great question, Mahan. Are we really in control of our own destiny? That's a very difficult question to answer without being philosophical. But
go for it.
But I really think to be in control of your own destiny requires you to understand that during those times which I was in turmoil, it was dependent upon how I reacted to it. So as the injury hit me in both of those scenarios, I did not simply say, this is my final destination. I proved to people that you can transfer those skill sets into other areas of your life, that you can perform just as well and make just as much a profound difference in society than you would have playing the NFL. I truly believe the injury in the NFL was a result of God telling me, I have other works for you to do. And I didn't know I would fall into this environment of working with abused and neglected youth. But again, I responded to the call to get better. And that's where I decided I needed to further educate myself. And I needed to meet new and interesting people that that could help guide me through this, you know, questionable moment in my life of where I wanted to be. So I think when you talk about whether it's luck and faith of where I am, yes, but it's also my reaction and plan to where I really want to be and still carrying out those particular actions. So, you know, I'm always on the spiritual side as opposed to the objective side. So in my response, I think God has already has our situation established as to how we're going to and what we're going to do in this society at the time in which we're on this earth. And we're just carrying out his mission. And I truly believe, regardless of what I want to do, he knows what I have to do. And that's what I'm doing today. So many people say, hey, Darrell, you could be on Wall Street. You used to work at Wall Street. You could be in a law firm. Why are you doing what you're doing? And I go back to the very question you said is it luck or is it faith? I think God just moved me to this environment to do this kind of work because that's what he had for me to do.
Yeah. And it's also, you know, a willingness to listen to the voice of God when it speaks through either gifts and blessings or through adversity, and to find meaning in that. This is reminding me of this verse in the Quran that says, you know, people plan, you plan and God plans, but God is the best of planners.
That's right. Amen. Amen.
So I want to turn, you know, to Wernle and your passion for Wernle and for helping youth in need. Help us connect the dots between who you are, your faith, and the work you do as CEO of Wernle.
You know, I've been here for 18 years, and Mahan, I thought it would be a 3-year journey, and I'd be moving on to something different. The passion for this organization, the work I do, first is a result of God pulling me to this environment and keeping me in this environment, because he felt as if this is the work I really needed to be doing at this particular time. And this is where I needed to establish my livelihood.
Say a little bit more about the work. Like, what is the work? So
when we talk about the work, it's really rebuilding relationships and restoring hope of our young men and women that are between the ages of 6 and 18 years of age that reside on our campus for about a year period of time. So these young men and women that live on campus have been severely abused, mentally, physically, sexually abused. They have been abandoned by parents or grandparents, or they have just been neglected. And not by their own reasons, but because of the environments that are going on within their homes. So it's our responsibility to help them fight through and get through the trauma through therapeutic intervention, and then give them normalcy so that they can reunite back with their respective families. And we hope that the families aren't dysfunctional enough. So often it is that when we send them back, they experience the same thing. So we also pull the family into our therapeutic environment and force them to also be part of this process and teach them how to be parents and how to be successful with them and with their children. That passion to change the lives of those young men and women is like I see myself, right? During my adolescent years when we were poverty stricken and we didn't have much, and I had to persevere through that. And there was not a lot of support and help to get us there. But again, I feel like if I can help, I will. And if I can get groups to help, we will. And I believe the passion of making sure we can get kids better is the reason why I get up every day. There is no better motivation or passion than to know that you've got a child better and safer than he was previously.
Well, honestly, that sounded to me like an expression of the golden rule. do unto others what you would have done unto you. And so what you would have wanted people to do for us, if we were in that situation, we do for them.
That's right. That's right.
Well,
I think also, Mahan, I think that's what COVID has done for us. It forced us to come together because we've been running and spending less time as family. We forgot about our kids and our children, right? And now we're forced to stay in homes for the last 2 months. I call it, spiritual timeout, right? To say we're timing out from work, we're timing out from all that. I want you to spend time with your family. And I want you to begin to understand that it's not all about the dollar. It's not all about your job. It's not all about your car and it's really about each other. And I think that's what this moment has done. It's forcing us to come back to what God had us to do.
Thank you, Darrell. Let me now bring in a couple of your colleagues from Wernle. Well, joining us now is Faris Ghani, who is the philanthropy officer for Wernle, and Pastor Clifford Nunn, Cliff, who is the events manager and campus chaplain at Wernle. And in many ways, especially based on what we were just talking about as well, I'm sure people will see that Wernle is a faith-based organization, or faith is very important to the work that it does. So tell us, Pastor Cliff, what do you do as chaplain on campus at Wernle?
Absolutely. Actually, there's quite a few tasks that I get to perform as chaplain. There's a weekly service when we're not in quarantine, of course, that I am able to host for all of the residents who wish to attend, as well as staff. I also get the opportunity to visit the units, just to share with the youth. Sometimes I'm a calming presence that comes on to the units. A lot of young people enjoy engaging with someone such as myself, looking for opportunities for prayer or instruction as to who or what God is and how it relates directly, to their life, or sometimes indirectly. And then I do a lot of counseling as well from the chaplain's perspective, working with young people that have suffered severe trauma, as ours have. Can be a very exhausting and taxing task at times. So I spend a good deal of my time working with our staff and helping them just kind of process through scenarios, or just sometimes just being an ear, just to listen and let them process through.
And how do you support people who either don't believe in God or who are not Christian in your work?
It's a really interesting question. I've had the opportunity of working with at-risk youth for close to 25 years now. And sadly, it seems that the majority of the young people that I have the opportunity to work with do not really come from a religious foundation. They do not have a lot of exposure in their natural family settings to religion. Sometimes it's more from the perspective of, if there is a God, tell me why in the world did he or she or it allow this to happen to me? Why has my life unfolded with the trauma and the pain and the experiences that I've had? If there's someone up there somewhere who's supposed to love me, to watch over me, to protect me. So I really approach a lot of that from the perspective of love, peace, tolerance, understanding, never forcing the issue, of course, and just allowing them to kind of talk their way through that. We all know that sometimes just through expression of the pain and the trauma that we've experienced, sharing that kind of helps us come to terms and comes to grip with that. But we're very conscientious of anyone who does express a religious preference. And there have been many times that I have ordered Qurans and various other books and given to residents and helped them read them and help them process them. There are also other religious leaders in the community that I can connect to our youth through our chapel services or through other venues. So there's a variety of ways that we truly try to be sensitive to anyone who expresses any type of religious connection, just helps them really have a better foundation from which to build and hopefully heal, at some point.
I suppose, this question that people, especially who come from such difficult circumstances and abused and broken families, are asking, why does this happen to me? We're asking now at the civilizational or global level, why did something like, COVID happen, or other disasters and tragedies. Now, I guess one more question I'd like to ask is the service that you provide, the presence. And we can't change what happens, right? We can only figure out, this was something that connects to conversation with Darrell earlier, adversity presents itself as a cosmic law of nature in a way, and we have to just figure out how to deal with it. And faith gives us a resource to be able to do that. Do you think that organizations that don't have chaplains or that don't provide an option for a faith-based perspective are, impoverished in a way, missing something, that we need more of this?
Again, another really good question, Mahan. You're talking to a person of faith who has been in the church, his entire life at some capacity. So I certainly feel that there is an important piece that is missing if there is not some type of a connection or opportunity for people to explore their faith. And I say that in the broad term. I think faith is foundational to who we are as human beings, and it helps us wrestle with difficult challenges that we face. I think faith also brings peace. Faith also brings calm and understanding when we allow it to move in our lives in such a way. So regardless of where that faith is founded or is based, I think exposure to faith, to love, tolerance, peace, those sorts of positive influences in our lives in any circumstance is powerful and important. So I understand, some nonprofits do not want to place themselves in a category of being faith-based, or place themselves in a category of wanting to introduce faith or religion into their programs or into their services. And I think it can be done. And I think it can be done very, very powerfully to help equip people who have especially suffered trauma, help them come to grips with that. As I said, find some peace, even if it's self-soothing and calming in and of itself for them. I think it can play a very powerful role when we put it in the right perspective. Religion, sadly, also could be used to sometimes shame individuals, or coerce, or to force. And we never want to do that. We never want to move into those areas, but to allow it to be a source of love and peace, then it's powerful. And I think is healing in times, especially for young people.
Thank you, Pastor Cliff. Now, Faris, COVID-19 has blindsided the world. Businesses, families, nations, and organizations, nonprofits are suffering. How are you adjusting to this new environment?
Yes. Well, first of all, thank you very much for giving us the opportunity here, Mahan, and very, very much appreciated. As you know, and anyone who's in development, you want to get in front of people physically. That's and obviously that's not possible right now, and has not been for almost now 2 months. But that also possesses an opportunity where technology is allowing us to connect with people, virtually, connect with more people than maybe we would even do it in person. So there's a flip side to this, and the most important thing that we discuss as a development team, or when we're speaking to our donors and supporters, is that the show must go on. We still have the most vulnerable that need our help and support. Those needs haven't stopped. We need support. We need funds to keep our campus, to keep our staff, to keep the kids healthy, safe, and their education and therapy to be continued. So that does not stop. The challenges are there, but as I said, I think this actually opened up. We became more creative as a development team, as a development individual. We've come up with more creative ways to connect with people. And that could be in the form of, hosting a Zoom lunch, a Zoom coffee, with maybe multiple people at one time if need be. So, challenges are there, but we've found ways to overcome it.
Yeah, it sounds like this is the Flash philosophy. The challenges will come, and the question is, you have the capacity for change, and how do you plan and sort of deploy the best that you have in order to bring about the change that new circumstances require. And then I suppose a strong leader and a good organization is going to find a way to hold on to that change while still at the same time, being open to the constant, which is change. Now, one of the things that I saw that you're going to be doing is hosting a concert soon of Pakistani singers. And so for those of you who don't know, I'm originally from Pakistan, and you are too. So that's something that I find very interesting. What's that all about?
Sure, and I think Cliff and I both kind of chime in on this. So it's a 2-day event where we have the first day is going to be English, English songs. It says I believe we have 4 individuals or bands who will perform, just regional, local individuals. The idea is for us to connect with people. Hopefully they're entertained, and at the same time be able to raise money in utilizing that platform. As I said earlier, we've had to cancel our events, right? The golf outing was going to be towards the end of this month, had to be canceled. So we had to come up with a creative way of still connecting with people and, receiving support. So it's a 2-day event. The first day is the English speaking groups, and the second day, in order to increase our reach, we were able to confirm a band that's based out of Houston, Texas, for that piece. So I think, again, if we were just doing a physical event, we would probably just, bring in people from the region or from the area. This is going to give us an opportunity to really go out and find hopefully new people that will be our supporters. And bottom line, doesn't matter what culture you are. The most important thing is that there's kids who need our help, and that doesn't have that doesn't have a face from a cultural standpoint or from a religious standpoint. It's based on need.
Well, God bless you in all of your wonderful work. I want to turn to maybe a final point, and this is going back to Darrell's book, Change Does Not Occur in a Flash. And you're a motivational speaker, and the book is inspirational as it goes through your life story, but it also has, it really tugs at your heart in places. And one of the last chapters in the book is called Tragedies, and it dwells on death. It says death can strike at any time. The chapter goes on to speak so movingly about the many losses in your life, and even some scary close calls you've personally experienced, the passing of close relatives like your mother, sister, nephew, an Irish teammate who collapsed suddenly just hours after returning from the national championship celebration at the White House. Coming to terms with death is one of the central purposes of religion, as we all know. In fact, how we understand death determines how we give meaning to life. COVID-19 is something that has brought this close to home. And you also say in the book, you realize anybody can die at any moment. And this has been happening all around us, where healthy people get the virus and they're gone in weeks. So what I'd like to ask is why you chose to end a book, like a motivational book, with such a powerful and intimate reflection on death, which most people don't like to talk about.
Unbelievable question, and I really had to ponder, this chapter, and if I would even place it into the book. The one thing I did notice about the tragedies is one thing in life is guaranteed, and we know that is death, right? And just as everything else, as I think about my kids' graduations, and they thought it was guaranteed, And, you know, but those things of the world is not guaranteed. And the only thing we can guarantee is death. And how we live in this world is dependent upon how we see death. And I truly believe through a significant amount of reflection that those who see death in a negative perspective is a result of seeing it selfishly, right? And I think about myself dying and oh, I got 10 years left, or you could see life that way. Or you could see it in the way that during my lifetime, these are the contributions I'm gonna make to society. And when death happens, we get celebrated, right? It's a celebration of our lives, not a negative, controversial conversation. But so often we are so concerned about ourselves and how we position ourselves in the world and not what we're doing for the world. And I think as I think about death, I only think about whether I've contributed enough to society. And that's going to be a celebratory moment in my life when it does happen. And hopefully people can say, well, you know, his time has been a productive time, a celebrated time, and a time that motivated others to do the same work, perhaps. So it can be, you know, so as I thought through this particular chapter, I said, you know, it is motivational. And I watched my best friend right after leaving the White House, and President Bush Sr. and Dan Quayle, Vice President Dan Quayle, in hours from getting off the plane. And we go to a local establishment and he falls down and then goes through significant, you know, physical challenges and dies, right? I mean, right there. But he never thought of, and he had heart issues. No one knew that, but he had heart issues. But he always lived his life for everyone else. And it was so celebrated, right? And we didn't see it as a negative piece, but all of us rallied behind him. For years to come, we all rallied behind him, even through a foundation of dollars for other kids to come in and be part of the Notre Dame experience. So how do you see death, and how you position that for other people to appreciate could be seen in a derogatory moment in visual, or it could be seen as a motivational opportunity to change the world just like he or she did. So I am glad that I got that chapter in the book, and hopefully people begin to see their lives differently and not see it selfishly, but see it as to how they're giving back to society and in how we can celebrate your life for the work that you've done.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I think that's one of the ways in which faith really helps us to view things holistically, like cutting off something that's essential and a part of life and thinking of it only in negative terms, or not thinking of it at all, it diminishes who we are, and I suppose takes away from the holistic nature of life itself. So thank you for that. Thanks to all of you, Darrell Gordon, Faris Ghani, and Pastor Cliff Nunn for joining us today. God bless you.